Second part is conducting classroom research. By definition, classroom-centered research is centered on classroom and views classroom as the object of research instead of as something which is considered as setting. When we are considering classroom as a setting, we are looking at it as a situation, as a context. But as object, we are looking at classroom having all the characteristics of learners, students, teachers, lessons, pedagogies, methodologies, approaches, content, material, everything. Long argues that CCR, which is classroom-centered research, is eminently practical because it is concerned with what actually goes on in the classroom as opposed to what should be or what is supposed to go on in the classroom. So basically looking at what happens in the classroom is the area of research instead of suggesting what should happen in the classroom. In addition to language acquisition issues, SLA research does take into account language pedagogy. So second language acquisition does take into account among other issues such as cognition or behaviorism, cognitivism. Language pedagogy is also a matter of importance for SLA research, which is concerned with developing the ability to use language in communicative situation. Jarvis, for example, argues, our knowledge must come from our research, our own research. So what is empirical or experimental is going to benefit the learner as well as the teacher, because from having that information, from having hands-on information, you are developing your own knowledge as well as research. Research on classroom language learning is basically done by either observation or introspection. Observation is by maintaining a record through audio taping or videotaping. Introspection is self-reporting, and the techniques can be questionnaire, interviews, or asking questions from the learner directly, and sometimes combination of both. Through observation and then asking question or self-reporting, you can have or develop classroom research. Gaze through a new dimension on classroom-centered and says, classroom process research is also a part of classroom research. It is primarily concerned with the investigation of numerous factors that shape language acquisition in language classes, including shifting of nature of input that is given in the classroom. And here we take the assistance from Creson's input hypothesis that any input which is comprehensible, meaningful, is going to play a role, a very important role in the language learning acquisition process. So basically that is where this process takes us to classroom process research, which includes lots of other processes, but among them the important aspect is the input hypothesis. So based on that, we see the traditional classroom has the lecturer. So lecture is given. It's one way of imparting the information and knowledge. And who does that is the lecturer who does that. And the group is a whole group. Everybody is there. Independent learning is there. Single tasking. Mostly teacher-centered instruction and traditional instruction. Maybe if in the form of English language classroom, it's the direct method or translation method that is considered as the traditional instruction method. But based on the research or language pedagogy research, we see that the 21st century classroom is discussion oriented. It's not the lecturing, it's the discussion. And since language class is communicative class or requires communicative framework, that's why discussion is encouraged. The role of the teacher is not lecturer who just gives the lecture or imparts the knowledge in one stereotypical manner. His or her role is that of facilitator. That makes the learning process more student-centered or learner-centered, and his or her role is to facilitate the task by providing the sufficient information, opportunities, tasks, and let the learners take charge of their learning process. It's not the whole group, it is basically the small group, because learning takes place in a small group which requires collaboration, discussion, collective efforts which can't be done in a whole group. Groups are formed on the basis of their abilities, and the groups are given the learning as per their specific needs. This classroom is collaborative, which actually demands or requires collaboration on the part of the learner, and things are done collectively rather independent learning, where the learner is learning in isolation. It's not the single tasking, it is multitasking. Since communication process is all about multitasking communication, so the tasks which are given to students are multitasking, are having different subtasks within that broader task for students to carry out in the classroom. It is definitely student-centered instruction, where the students are the focus of learning rather the teacher, and differentiated instruction. It is not one lecture for everybody or one information for all. It is how, based on every individual's learning needs, the teacher determines what needs to be given to the students for effective communication or enabling students to develop effective communication skills. Now, there are certain concerns expressed by Noonan as far as classroom-centered research is concerned. Number one is much of this CCR has not in fact been conducted in the classroom. That is what the concern is. And furthermore, the CCR carried out inside classroom has often entailed interference with the prevailing conditions. So that research is being interfered by the prevailing conditions, can be the time frame or the infrastructure or the content or the curriculum and all these kinds. So the interference factor is very much there as far as this particular research is concerned. The second is the problem selected for inquiry or for research inquiry often reflect the concerns of second language acquisition rather language pedagogy. So the domain of inquiry is more concerned with the process of second language acquisition, or rather determining the language pedagogy or the approaches which are important for language pedagogy. Third is that it belongs to the discourse of second language and not language pedagogy. So discourse is all the interpretation, understanding, and that is there only for second language acquisition process and not for the classroom research or the language pedagogy. Fourth, and most importantly, simply transmitting the results of research, even relevant research, to teachers may not have much effect on actual practice. So even the findings or the research findings which are there, which are given to teachers, they will not have a strong impact or effect on the practices unless and until the teacher himself or herself carries out the research there in the classroom and verify that. So these are some of the concerns raised by Noonan as far as classroom-centered research is concerned. To conclude, classroom-centered research focuses on what actually happens in the classroom and proposing language pedagogies for effective practices. 21st century classroom is proposed to include research, facilitation, collaboration, multitasking, student-centeredness, and problem-solving practice.